Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the first of 4 events in LACMA's Art and Social Emotional Learning Evenings for Educators program, and for the program's 40th anniversary. We feel so fortunate to be able to continue bringing Evenings for Educators to teachers across Southern California and beyond. And we thank you for your support over the years, and we're so glad that you're here with us today. My name is Laura Schilling, and I am the Teacher Programs Coordinator at LACMA. During today's program, we will be hearing from LA-based teacher Monique Marshall, who will be discussing the intersections of social emotional learning, or SEL, art, and anti-bias, anti-racism learning. Many education experts say that SEL is of crucial importance right now, as most students are missing out on valuable face-to-face connections with their peers. And so we really hope that you leave this program with a few more strategies and tools to support your students and bring SEL and art into the virtual learning space. I want to take a moment to acknowledge that LACMA resides on what was historically the homeland of the Gabrielino Tongva people who were dispossessed of their land. We pay our respects to Tongva ancestors as well as present-day Tongva elders and relatives. Yesterday was Indigenous Peoples Day, which is a perfect opportunity to open up discussion of Indigenous histories and cultures with your students. Los Angeles has the largest Indigenous population of any city in the US, and it is so important that we honor the diversity of this place we call home and seek to understand its history and present. So there are 4 individual events that are part of this art and social emotional learning themed Evenings for Educators. And we'd love to see you at all of them. So I'm going to share a bit of information. After today, which is the lecture presentation part of the program, we will move into the hands-on art making workshops, with our first workshop involving portraiture taking place this Thursday from 4 to 5 p.m., inspired by local artist Jose Lozano's work. And then next Tuesday from 4 to 5, we'll have a workshop about shapes and emotions, specifically looking at facial expressions on masks. And next Thursday, we will close out the program at 4 to 5 once again with a workshop about colors and feelings, looking at some abstract artwork in LACMA's collection. We are going to go ahead and drop the registration links for those events in the chat now so that you can sign up if you haven't already. The next thing I want to talk about is geared towards all of the LAUSD teachers who are with us today. Evenings for Educators is an LAUSD salary point course that includes 16 hours of programming plus an additional assignment to be completed at home. If you're interested in participating for credit, it's a 1-point course. Make sure you fill in the salary point portion of every survey you receive this week and next week. We'll be sending out post-program surveys either the day of the event or the day after, so check your inbox for those. If you are participating for salary point credit, you're required to attend all 4 of the art and social emotional learning events and complete all 4 surveys. And then once we have that roster of teachers who are participating for credit, we'll send you the assignment instructions. So that's all of the kind of housekeeping stuff. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce today's presenter, Monique Marshall. Monique is an elementary school educator who has been working with young children in independent schools for 30 years. With a BS in elementary education from Skidmore College and a master's degree from Bank Street Graduate School in New York City, Monique has been dedicated to working with and learning from young children her entire adult life. Monique is currently a 5th grade social studies teacher at Wildwood School, the founder of and co-advisor for the school's decade-old K-5 student diversity group, advisor to the parent diversity group, and a member of the school's multicultural leadership team, and a proud parent of 2 college students. Monique has presented workshops at various conferences, including the annual NAIS-sponsored POCC, People of Color Conference, the biannual Across Colors Conference, PEN, Progressive Educators Network, CES, Coalition of Essential Schools, the Young Child Expo and Conference, as well as at Wildwood and many other independent and public school communities. She is dedicated to increasing awareness and competency around creating multicultural curriculum and inclusive school culture in all educational institutions in the early years of children's development. So we'll give a virtual warm round of applause for Monique. We're so fortunate to have her here with us today, and I will go ahead and turn it over to you now, Monique.
Thank you so much, Lara. I could not be more pleased to be here. I'm so honored to be in the presence of so many educators on an after-school day, just like me. Hopefully, many of you are feeling a little bit of relief for the end of the day, and yet we have more to do together. So I just left my fifth graders about half an hour ago and jumped over here to be with you. So I just couldn't be happier. It's next to working with kids, my very favorite thing. My next favorite thing is working with teachers and talking to teachers and idea sharing with teachers. So when Lara reached out to me, we ended up in a really interesting conversation around the connections between art and social emotional learning and anti-bias learning, right? And in our conversations, we had a few of them, they just got more and more, I got more and more excited around really talking with educators about how difficult it really is to separate these things. So in my spaces, in my classroom spaces, social emotional learning cannot happen without diversity and inclusivity, and vice versa. And then art has been a tool in my classroom for the 30 years that I've been in classrooms that has opened the door really to all kinds of deepening of all kinds of learning. So I'm excited to put it all together here today. And I'm very 100% sure that this will just be a beginning and not an end. But I hope folks are as excited as I am to be here. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a story. Indulge me, this is my daughter. I flashed her on the screen earlier. As some of you might have seen. I clicked the wrong button and she popped up, but it's fine because she's got such a beautiful face. I could look at it all day. This was my little one. She's now 20, about to be 21 years old, October 20th. Her name is Moreau. And I put her front and center right now, right here today, because this work is about our children. It's about the children perhaps that we are raising in our homes. It's about the children that we have the opportunity and the privilege to raise in our schools. And this photo was taken this summer. And it's, very clear, I think, to all of us that there's a lot going on in the world right now. And Moreau, who's a junior in college, was home and still is home. She identifies as an artist, as a musician, as an athlete. And this particular summer, when there was a protest right in our neighborhood, we live in a Black and brown neighborhood in Los Angeles, and right down the road, there was a bike protest. And she got really excited about it. And she wanted to make a sign. And I'm bringing this especially to this group of people because she wanted to make a sign that would show not only what she felt was important, but how she was feeling. And as she worked on this sign, and this is the way this young person works, is with a lot of focus. She worked for an entire day on not just the front, but the back of this sign. And she went to this bike protest, and she went with her father, and she came back and she said to me, "Mom, what really struck me was, first of all, I was the only person with a sign because not everybody could figure out how to make a sign and ride a bike." She was really creative, and she, put holes in the corners, and she strung it over her, over her body sideways. So she said, so not only was she the only one with a sign, but there were all kinds of people that loved her sign so much they wanted to take photos of her with it. And she said, "Mom, I turned the sign on the Angela Davis side because I felt like that was the side that people were caring about right now, right? My Blackness, my Black identity." But people began to realize that there were two sides of the sign, and they all asked me to turn it around. They wanted to see all of me, and they felt that all of me was important, right? So I'm a Black gay female, part of my identity, she said. I felt it. I felt that everybody wanted to see who I was. I throw this picture in here because you see Dad tried with his sign. It's not quite what his daughter did, but it's okay. He worked hard. Then he couldn't figure out how to carry it, so he actually left it at home. But this is what creativity can do, right? The arts, Moreau was gifted with an arts education. She has parents who feel that art is so important. And when she's struggling, she goes to art. When she's having feelings, she goes to art. And so that is really what tonight is about. It's about how we can tap into and help our students tap into their feelings and create from those feelings, right? And then on the other end of it, how can we care for our students and really see them fully, the way that Moreau was feeling seen fully by the people, the strangers that were around her. And so right at the end of last school year, when we all suddenly left our classrooms and ended up in what I call Zoom school, for those of us that had the privilege to be on Zoom. I know not everybody was able to do that. But in Zoom school, we ended up having some conversations right at the end of our school year about, the killing of George Floyd. I was teaching 5th grade at the time, and I'm still in 5th grade. And my 5th graders were full of emotion. And it was right like during the last days of instruction. And so I invited them to stay on and write some poetry. I offered them a couple of different days in the following weeks. And a whole group of kids decided that they wanted to come back and create more art. They wanted to write some poetry. So I'm going to start with just the voices of the children. And here is the voice of an African-American girl named Breeze. This is her process, and this is her poem. Open the door. Even in the TikToks, songs for George Floyd, I can't breathe. Too scared to take a run at night. Brushes make your hair flat. People saying my brush or my comb is a gun. It might be too scary, but we've been through this many times because Black people hurt. The police and their actions make us suffer from the consequences and the things that they have done. I know I am beautiful inside and out, but some people only see monsters. A great man got killed because they thought his $20 bill was counterfeit. But look how the tables turn. It was a real 20. I've been searching for the past couple of weeks, thinking what's going on is crazy, the racism under a deep blanket, uncovered by Make America Great Again. My answer to making America great: be true to yourself, open the doors, say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. By Breeze, age 11. And so as Breeze was processing and using art and poetry to process the way she needed to process, a classmate of hers who identifies as a white boy wrote this: A Letter to Black Lives Matter by Hudson, a 10-year-old white boy. And Hudson, very much on purpose, went through this process of thinking about how he was going to write this poem, how he was going to express his feelings, but he knew, and this has to do with the work that we did all year that I'm going to be talking to you more about, he knew that he needed to process those feelings and name his whiteness. Okay, a 10-year-old white boy. A good feeling I can have is to know that I matter. A good feeling I can have is to make someone smile. A good feeling I can have is to let you know love is by your side. I am with you because I know all lives cannot matter until Black lives matter too. A good feeling I can have is when we all get along. I know there are good heroes too on the front line every day. I hope that holds true. A bad feeling I can have is to see someone hurt. A bad feeling I can have is witnessing the hate, when all life is simply something to celebrate. A bad feeling I can have is to look the other way, knowing what hasn't been fair. A good feeling I want you to have is to know that I care. A good feeling you can have is to know that you matter. A good feeling you can have is to be able to smile. A good feeling we can have is to think we'll build bonds, feel good that we'll respond. Ending this racism after all, will be a good feeling. A good feeling you can have is to look forward to a day where it never needs to be pointed out again because all is okay. That's a good feeling you deserve. And so it's kind of incredible to me that I just realized that I shared this poem and I didn't even put together that Hudson says over and over again the word feeling. I really, truly, I mean, I shared this poem, but it didn't dawn on me until just now, how he grounds his work, right, and his thinking in feeling. And so I'm going to transition to the feelings wheel. So I don't know how many of you have seen this. If you Google feelings wheel, a lot of these will come up. I always make sure to tell teachers that if you are Googling the feelings wheel, and by the way, I will be sending out some materials. I typically don't send things out before I talk because I'm never 100% sure like what direction we might go in. So I want to make sure you get the just right stuff, but I will be sending you some things. But this feelings wheel does have an incredible collection of words in it. It also, if you look carefully, or maybe even not so carefully, you can find the word sexy. So I'm just naming that in case you do Google the feelings wheel and you want to share it with your kids, either have fun with the word sexy and, you know, you can do a word study on it, or, you know, you might want to, I don't know, find another feelings wheel. So the reason that I'm sharing this with you is because our feelings drive our behaviors, right? So the things that I do are driven by feelings that I have. And so it's important for me to be able to name those feelings and identify, you know, where I'm sitting. You know, around the time of George Floyd's murder, there was so much going on in me as a teacher at that time. It was really important for me to ground myself in my own feelings. And then similarly for the kids. And the reason that I think what happened in our classroom, even though we went off site, even though we couldn't touch each other and hug each other, even though, you know, all kinds of things were going wrong, the reason that I think things started to go well for us is because so much of the work we had done over the course of the year was grounded in feelings work and in social emotional learning. So this wheel, at the center, you see the 6 kind of main feeling families. You see sad, mad, scared, and peaceful, powerful, joyful. And it's important to see that the core feelings that we have, you know, are those 6. And then the more abstract the feelings get, the more they kind of radiate out on this wheel. So, and I love it. I just happened to look down in the chat and see we make feelings wheels. Beautiful. So I was going to name that a wonderful activity, a great thing to do with kids, and you could so do this on Zoom if you do have that capacity, would be to take photos of kids. I've done this myself, right? Where they name and come up with different feelings, and then they make, you know, what they think angry looks like, or what they think ashamed looks like, or what they think joyful looks like. And then there are a couple different ways to use those pictures, but you can certainly create your own feelings wheel with images of the kids. But also very interesting would be to then compare multiple different children's angry faces or angry bodies, right? And in this way, we get to really see the diversity of emotion, right? I know that when I've seen those posters, you know, that kind of have the pictures and it says, you know, angry underneath or happy. Well, who's happy, right, is my question. Who's sad? Who's angry? And so it's important for our young people to also understand that the body language, the facial expressions that they may be reading may not actually be what they're thinking, right? Sometimes my face looks a certain way, my body looks a certain way, and you're reading something that's not really true. So using the feelings wheel to like locate feelings and what those feelings look like and how we kind of engage with feelings is important. But the language is this other piece, right? Helping our young people so that when they face difficult feelings, right? Sad, mad, scared feelings in particular, certainly all of them, but when they face those kind of heavier feelings, that they have ways to express themselves, right? So they have language. So what I'm going to ask us to do, and it's definitely a trial run of something like this with so many people, which I'm so excited about, is I'm going to, I was going to try to stop my screen share, but my tech people, I am not actually seeing my screen share option. Hold on, interesting. Okay, I'm so sorry. I know you're going to be seeing lots of my tabs now, but interesting. Okay, hi everyone. I think now we can all see each other's faces. All right, what I'm going to try to do right here is invite you into a breakout room. This breakout room, wow, there are 332 people here. So let's see what the breakout function will let me do. Oh, very nice. Okay, so right now there are going to be about six, actually, yep, they're going to be about 6 or 7 people in a room. And what you're going to do is just introduce yourselves to one another, right? Say hi. And not everybody may be able to participate. I understand that some people, you know, are off screen or, you know, doing other things. But I'm hoping that enough of you in the room will be able to say hello to each other. We all need a little bit more connection, right? We're so kind of far apart from each other. Say hello to each other. You definitely want to, you know, share your name, even though it's on the screen. It's kind of nice to hear people pronounce their name. And then if you could locate yourself in a feeling, right? You can think about that feelings wheel we just looked at, but locate yourself in a feeling. See if you can do that in one word. See if you can grab one word. And then I'm going to just pull you back. So it's going to be quick. There are 6 or 7 of you in there, and you're going to have about 4 or 5 minutes. So introduce yourself, name, locate yourself in a feeling word. And if you just can't pick, you can choose 2. All right. So it's a little greeting. Go say hi to an educator. Here we go. Oh, and if you've never been in a breakout room before, which is probably unlikely, but just in case, you're going to see me. Oh, I'm going to open the rooms. You'll see an invitation. You'll just take the invitation, head on in. And then when you get there, I highly recommend just somebody who's, you know, brazen and bold, just start. And it'll actually help if you just call on the next person, right? That's what I tell the kids all the time. Just call on the next person, and that way we can kind of move it along. So feeling word, name, feeling word, and then I'm going to be bringing you back. I'll give you a little shout out to say that you've got 1 more minute. When you see the countdown coming, you can wait. It'll bring you back automatically. You don't have to click the button. All right, here we go. All right, I think everyone's assigned. Let me know if you can't find your way in. And if you are choosing not to go in because you can't, that's fine. You can just stay on the main screen, but if you need help, just let me know and I'll try to help you. Lori, are you able to get in? I'm seeing you. And hold on. You can unmute yourself if you, oh. Is there anybody on the main screen that is trying to get into a breakout room and can't? Okay, good. I'm going to mute myself. there are people who just come, oh no, there aren't. People that are back or are here on the screen, can you see the screen? Can you give me a thumbs up? You can see the agenda? Okay, excellent. All right, I hope you just, I know people are still trickling back in, but I hope that you had a good time in those rooms, that you got to just connect for even just a brief moment with another teacher or another person that's like doing what you're doing, or at least doing something like what you're doing. Because what we're doing is for sure hero's work. I mean, there's a lot to be done. And so I believe, of course, I lost my breakout rooms. I cannot see them. So I believe, hold on, let me take a peek here. Yeah, oh, all breakout rooms will close in 14 seconds. So we still may be waiting for a few folks. So as we're waiting for folks to return, I can't say enough how important it is to do our own social emotional learning work. I mean, and to do our own diversity, inclusion work. None of this happens with young people unless we're doing it with ourselves. So what I'm trying to give you a little bit of an experience of is some of the things that, I think are important to do with young people. And so inviting young people, I don't know how many of you, do morning meetings, but inviting them to, in the morning meeting, do a breakout, host. Of course, my dog decides to bark right now. Isn't this Zoom teaching incredible? Okay, Zoom teaching at home. Oh my goodness. Hold that thought. Look at the agenda. I will be right back. I'm going to put my dog someplace else. Hold on. Okay, best laid plans. This is a dog that never barks. Let me just make that clear. She never barks. Of course, today she decided to. So we're going to talk about creating that container, right? Doing this work with our young people so that we can create a container for when stuff happens. And again, like a lot of stuff is happening. So when stuff happens, there's a place for them to put it. Also, we're going to take that look at kind of who we are and why it matters. Why does it matter who the teachers are in the space? And then we're going to do something called an identity home hunt that I've been doing with the fifth graders, and actually we've done it across our school with all the kids. Love it. And then thinking about the complexity of identity, right? And how our feelings can really play into understanding the fullness of who we are. And who others are. And then I'm going to try to share some classroom application. And I say try because I have a lot of ideas and a lot of projects, and I've kind of put them all in there, and we'll see where we go. But for sure, we'll get a taste of what this looks like in the classroom. And then I have breakout number 3, question mark. I'm hoping, although I feel like we would need a couple of hours for this, but I'm hoping that we can get back together as practitioners and just brainstorm after, seeing and hearing some of the ideas that I'm sharing today. All right. So just naming that balance is important. And so many of us, and white supremacy culture holds thinking typically above feeling. In white supremacy culture, thinking is valued over feeling. And so naming that is important, and recognizing that we need all three. We need to do all three of these things. We need to be able to think and be rational, right, and reason. We need to be able to feel and tap into those feelings and understand our feelings. And then we need to take action. We need to do. So all of this work that we're going to talk about needs to be in balance, right? So it's not all living in the feeling realm. It's not all living in my head, in the thinking realm, and it's not all in action. And so just out of curiosity and maybe conversation with one another through the chat, think about where you typically live. Do you typically live in the feeling realm, in the thinking realm, or the doing realm? And if you would just type that into the chat, and you can just check the chat and see what folks say. So typically thinking, feeling, doing, where do you land? And there's nothing better than seeing like 300 and some odd words slip by. I like all the feels. Great. And as you can see, right, we're kind of all over the map, right? We're thinking, feeling, doing, feeling and thinking both, LOL. Right? A lot of feelers, combo, mostly feeling and doing. And so because we're all over the map, we need to attend. This is true for our students too, right? We need to take care of all of it, right? If I typically live in my thinking, I need to be thinking about, okay, how can I access the feeling realm? How can I figure out how to take action and do something? If I'm one of those people that's like, jump into action, I don't want to think or feel, I need to find my way into thinking and feeling so that the action I take can be actually, based someplace besides just going for it. So it's kind of like a juggling, right? And so this work of creating the container in our classrooms is what we're going to talk about. In order to create a container, we need to have some guidelines. So we need to have ways of leaning in to complex topics in our classrooms and in our personal spaces. So these guidelines that I'm going to share with you, and I'm going to do so in a fashion that's not my favorite. I'm going to talk them at you. I would much prefer to spend about 20 minutes like really living into these guidelines, but I want us to be able to move forward as well. So I'm going to share these guidelines with you. These are guidelines that in my classroom are alive. So the children are thinking about these things. They're creating them in the beginning of the year. I think many of us think about classroom practice and how we're going to ask kids to create either classroom rules or guidelines or promises for the classroom and for behavior. And those are really important. And I create those in the beginning of the year with the students, and then I create these. And they look different, a little bit different every year. But these particular guidelines are ones that I kind of anchor around. So the first, that I love hearing children say this throughout the year, it's okay to disagree. It's really important. It's okay to disagree. No shame or blame of self or others. So many of us have a relationship to this one. It's okay to disagree. For me, growing up, my relationship to this one was, my mother said I was agreeable, and boy, was I. I'm a really agreeable person. And though that is true by nature, I also know that it meant that it became very difficult for me to disagree. And people have stories around this one. So what I'm going to ask you to do again in the chat is if you would just check in and just record something about your relationship to this guideline. It's okay to disagree. So how did you grow, when you grew up, was this truth for you? Was it difficult to disagree? Yeah. So I'm seeing things like people pleaser and hard for me to do. Yelling is not bad, right? Good. So just throw in there your relationship to this one. And this is for sure what I would ask kids, right? Like, how do we relate to this one? How do we feel when we disagree with someone? How does it feel? Great. And as folks are doing that, I want you to think about this next one. Because we come from so many different places and so many different experiences around whether or not it's okay for us to disagree, oftentimes we impact folks and we don't always realize it, right? So I may be totally comfortable with disagreement, and I may be, saying it straight to you, and it might land on you hard. It might impact you in a very difficult way, and I may or may not be aware. And so this next guideline of not only making sure that we know that it's okay to disagree, it actually will deepen relationship if we can disagree, but that I need to be aware of my impact, even though my intent may be good. So the way that I explain this one to kids, and I love doing this one live in live school, is I go and pretend to step on someone's foot. And I say to them, I am a very large person. If I step on your foot, it's going to hurt. So I'm not actually stepping on your foot, but if I step on your foot, it's going to hurt. And so I have some options. I can say, what? I didn't step on your foot, right? Because I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't step on your foot. I can just apologize and say, I didn't mean to, right? But neither one of those is really owning that I impacted you, that I actually stepped on your foot. And what happens in, in a kind of a heart space, in a feeling space, is if someone hurts me and they can't own that they've hurt me, they're just spending the whole time saying how they really weren't meaning to hurt me, it's not helping me at all. And so being aware of impact instead of explaining away intent. So intent, I like this other guideline of, hold good intent. I do. I hold in my head and my heart that folks are typically well-intended. At the same time, your intent, your beautiful, supportive intent doesn't matter if I've been hurt. And so leaning into this one can be tricky, asking ourselves to slow down and not try to just explain away what we meant to say or meant to do, or even as teachers saying, oh, well, Johnny didn't mean that. He didn't really mean it. It wasn't his intent. But instead to note the impact and to help our young people see that they have impact. And then once we impact someone, it is then our responsibility to care for them and to find a way in. So being aware of intent and impact. This one, encouraging and engaging in both and thinking. This is my favorite one, especially for 4:43 on a school day when you're in a workshop, both and. It is both amazing to get professionally developed, and it is exhausting to be on Zoom or working all day long, right? So this can be internal. This can be true for me, that I can be so excited to be here and I can be struggling to be here both at the same time, right? It also works outside of me. So the experience that I'm having is my experience, and the experience you're having is your experience. And so if I can own that we're literally, having different, we're engaging differently in whatever it is, right? In this lesson, in, pumping gas at the gas station, whatever it is, I'm in relationship to other people, and I'm having my experience, and the gas station attendant is having their experience. So this is a really crucial one in again that union between SEL work and DEI work, right? Social emotional learning means I'm building empathy and understanding myself and others, and in my diversity, equity, and inclusion work, I have to recognize that I'm having different experiences from other people, and mine may seem like the right one, but actually mine is just mine, right? And theirs is theirs. It has value. This is a perfect time for noticing process and content, because my least favorite process is talking at people, and it's a way of sharing information, but it's my least favorite way of engaging with folks. So I'm really appreciating the chat, by the way. When I see folks in response, it feels more responsive, which is really my bag. I prefer the small groups and the responsiveness. But again, that's me as an educator right now, noticing process and content. The reason why, and this helps me think about, how I'm engaging with others. Why am I processing this way? Why is my process like this? It's to get through content more quickly, and the content is worthy. Like the content, it's worthwhile. It's worth this particular process. And this in relationship helps me stay in relationship, because it's very easy to turn off when I'm not feeling it. Like if I'm just like, I don't care what she's saying or whatever. Maybe if I ask myself, is it the content, what she's talking about, that's turning me off, or is it the process that's turning me off? And I mean, I'm actually talking about me right now. So if there's part of this that's turning you off, you ask yourself, like, is it the content? Is it like, I don't believe in these guidelines, or this doesn't work for me? Or is it the process? And so again, if we can help young people like piece those things apart, it can help them in so many ways. It can also help them stay engaged in learning. Leaning into discomfort is really physical for me. I like the image of the leaning in, so that typically when we're uncomfortable, our bodies pull back. And I like to think of this as like standing on the edge of a cliff. Now, if you're standing on the edge of a cliff, unless you're outfitted for standing on the edge of a cliff with like a parachute or something, you should be leaning back, right? And there are plenty of reasons why you shouldn't lean into discomfort if it's not safe. And this is where we as teachers need to create safety, and at least brave spaces, right? Because perfect safety isn't possible, but we can create spaces where our young people can lean in to discomfort. And then this is the last one that I'll be sharing with you today, this maintaining of confidentiality. So I just think of this as like treating the stories that people are sharing with you as a gift. And of course, taking the themes, and especially in a classroom and especially in Zoom land, the stories that we're sharing are now in our living rooms, and maybe little brother's there, and maybe there's a, mom next to me, so we all have to live into this one and be as careful and as gentle, like hold the stories, hold these pieces that we're sharing gently, and respect them, respect the stories that people are sharing. All right. So again, I want you to just give a thought to these. And if you could, in the chat, think of the one that you are just so good at, right? Like it just comes second nature to you. You've got it. And just put it in the chat. So one of these guidelines that just comes naturally to you, you kind of feel, and go ahead, brag a little, right? This is good. It's good to feel proud. So what am I good at? Nice. Look at this group. I wish I could read all 370 of them. Beautiful. Beautiful. All right. And now we're going to kind of switch gears and think about the one that is stretchy for you. I call it a stretch, right? Think about the one who, the guideline that you really know you want to work on it. And you want to work on. Oh my gosh, somehow my chat went like up to the way top. Oh, here we go. Okay. Great. All right, thank you. I think there's so many people in the chat, it's like blowing up the chat. I love it. All right. So just keep these with you, take them with you into breakout rooms, assuming we get into another breakout room, and hope you can carry them into your classrooms and find a way to invite your young people as young as kindergarten can think about how to use these guidelines to create, really, again, brave spaces where they can be fully themselves. So this, who are we, the teachers, right? And why does it matter? Well, it matters because we just went over how we all have different relationships to how we communicate. We have different stories that we bring. And we are both windows and mirrors for the children we teach. Some of the children we teach will see themselves in us, and some will not. Some will see us and go like, oh, that's a different kind of a person. I never met that kind of a person before. And so for us, if we can model, be the adults that model understanding the many layers of our identity, we're going to, be able to invite our young people into being able to unpack all the layers of their own identity. And so with that, I'm going to invite you into an identity home hunt. So this is really simple. I'm going to turn off the screen share, and I'm going to try to find you. Where did you go? Oh my gosh. My computer is doing some very interesting things. I see, I found you now. I'm going to recreate these breakout rooms. Let's hope we can still fit all the people in them. Okay. All right, so there are 50 rooms. Here's what's going to happen. Before we go into these rooms, actually, there's so many people that I think maybe we'll just go into the rooms. Usually, and what I would do with a class is before we go into the rooms, I would have everybody do something together on the screen. But here's what I want you to do. The beauty, I'm all about embracing the things that work. The beauty of being not physically at school, for those of us that are not physically at school, the beauty of that is that we're in our homes, we're in spaces that actually say something about who we are. So even if right now you're in your car or you're in a friend's home, you are probably wearing something, or you have a pocket, you've got something on you that says something about you. And I'm going to go as far as to say, like, this Flair pen says something about me. It's the only kind of pen I like to write with, and I could probably tell you a story about that. But also in my home, I have all kinds of things. I've got, this beautiful piece of art that Moreau, my daughter, made for me for Mother's Day. I've got this big glass of water here that tells you something about me. So this is called an identity home hunt. So you're going to literally get up. This is also a really good thing to do because we're sitting way too much. You're going to get up. You're going to walk around your space, and you're going to find something that you can bring back and just kind of, you can just hold it to the screen right now just so that I can see that you've got it. We're going to take like 20 seconds to go get a thing. So go get something that says something about you. Go get something that says something about you. I'm going to. As soon as you're back and you've got the something, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. If you're comfortable having me take a screenshot of you and your object, you can hold it like I'm holding it. If you're more comfortable not having your face in it, you can hold it so that you're blocking your face. If you're not comfortable at all with being in any kind of screenshot, you can absolutely just turn your screen off. Okay, so again, make it comfortable for you. But to me, there's nothing better than seeing little bits of identity all over the screen. So I'm just waiting for a few more folks, but if you could just hold up whatever you've got patiently while we gather. Oh my gosh. Okay, hold on. And if some of my tech people in the background there want to be taking some screenshots too, this is pretty amazing. There's no way I'll get to all the pages. Oh, beautiful. And then as you're holding, if you can, try to scroll and see what you see, because this is the biggest identity home hunt I've ever done, and I'm kind of in love with it. Look at this. Wow. Oh my gosh. And thank you, so many of you, for being willing to be photographed. Promise we won't sell your photos or anything like that. Wow. Okay. Love it. All right. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to take your object and, hold on, let me see if I can find my breakout rooms. You're going to bring your object into a breakout room. It is not going to feel long enough because there's going to be too many of you. I think there's going to be like maybe up to 7 of you. we only have 5 minutes. So you're going to take your object in with you and then just tell one little piece about why it has something to do with your identity. Okay. Anything, and just notice as you're talking about it, notice emotions. So, and notice other people's emotions. Okay. So your object, what it has to do with you, what it has to do with your identity, and just notice emotions. Okay. 5 minutes. And I'll give you a little warning. As soon as you get in there, start. Just have somebody jump in and start, and then they can call on the next person. All right, here we go. All right, is there anyone here who needs help? Shirley, do you need help getting into a breakout room? Hold on, let me ask you to unmute. You can unmute yourself. Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Are you able to, do you see the invitation to the breakout room? It should be somewhere on your screen, somewhere, something you just click.
No.
You don't see it?
My wonderful Pete. I'll be glad to talk about this when we get a chance.
I know. I want you to talk about it in that breakout room, but you don't see it, huh? You don't see the invitation to the breakout room?
No, I don't see
Somewhere
anything like that.
Somewhere on your screen.
Else
Okay.
in there with me?
Yeah, supposedly, I mean, you should be assigned to a breakout room. Hold on, let me see if I can figure it out. But if you don't see the invitation, that's not going to help you if I figure it out. So
I am.
So Shirley, you can keep me company. Will you just tell me about your object?
This is a piece that I bought in Zimbabwe, in Africa, many years ago. I have a whole trove of them, and I just love these stone arts. Look at the shapes that they have and the colors of the stone and the face.
It's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, I love it.
And you know, it's funny. It reminds me of, I don't know, let me see if I can show you. One of my students actually gave me this. Can you see this?
Oh yeah, I see. What is that? I'm looking at books.
And so there's books, and then there's, do you see this piece of art?
Oh, yes.
It's from Africa, but I'm not sure where yet. I have to ask her.
It doesn't look like Zimbabwe though to me.
No, I don't think so.
Beautiful. Oh.
Gorgeous. And so you said you have a couple of those, or you have?
Oh no, I have a collection.
You have
about 6 of them, and some of them are quite heavy.
Oh, I love it.
I need to pick it up.
And how did you decide to collect
I collect whatever says, "Come here, Shirley." So if I go to an art gallery and I have some money and it says, "Come here, Shirley," then I work myself around to being able to buy it.
I love it. I love it. That's right. Well, and what do you, since we have a couple extra minutes, what do you do? What's your work, or how did you end up here?
I'm a retired university professor, and I'm a docent here at LACMA.
Oh,
I learned about these events, and this is going to help me to work with touring children, because we'll be doing that through Zoom. Exactly how it goes, I don't know yet. But
do this with them. Do this. They love it, right? And
fantastic.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Yeah. It could be really interesting to actually have them look for something that is connected to whatever exhibit or whatever it is that they're looking at. Maybe it's certain colors that they could be looking for in their home, or
Right.
Yeah, and they love it, holding it up to the screen, and it's just so beautiful. Yeah.
It is a wonderful thing for children.
Yeah.
We've all got to, the docents have really got to get ourselves together to do this.
Yeah.
It's different, touring the children.
Yeah, it's a totally different ball of wax, isn't it?
And Zoom. Oh my goodness.
I know.
More months, I guess, before the museum turns on again.
Wow. Well, I love it. I love it that you do these, you know, all of these things for educators. It's so important. And it's so sad that, you know, so many schools don't have access to art
Yes.
education. It just breaks my heart.
Yes. Yes.
So, yeah. So I'm really, really, really happy to be connected in any way.
So you work specifically for the public school system?
I actually work in the private school and I consult. So I do a lot of work with public schools and private schools. But yeah, I work currently at a private school. It's called Wildwood School in Los Angeles. Yeah. And where do you live?
I live close to the museum, about 15 blocks from the museum. So
Nice.
I go there quite regularly, and I've been doing it for the last 20 years. My son and I, we go there very frequently to the museum. I'm glad to be connected with the museum.
Yeah. So are you in the Wilshire area?
Yeah, the Mid-Wilshire area.
Mid-Wilshire. Mm-hmm.
Olympic and La Brea.
Oh, cool. I'm kind of right down the road. You know where Lamert Park is?
Yes.
I live in Lamert Park.
Ah.
Yeah. So we're down the road.
It's always going to be a historical place.
Yes.
It goes through so many changes.
I know.
They always survive.
That's right. It's a beautiful place though, huh?
Yeah.
All right, I am going to stop talking for a moment and see if I can make sure I bring people back on time, but it was so nice to talk to you, Shirley.
Oh, nice talking to you.
Thank you. I'm sorry you couldn't make it into the breakout room. Maybe next time it'll work.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I know that people are trickling back in. I hope it felt good to tell your stories, even though they were short. And I hope that people can see how wonderful this is to do with young people. Did people just, again, I can only see some of you, but by a show of hands, did people experience emotion in there at all? Did people either feel something as they were sharing, or did you get feelings from other people? What was it? Yeah, just show of hands works. Yeah, or nods. All right, cool. Thank you. And just maybe let me get this chat so I can see it again. And just out of curiosity, for those of you that are in classrooms, I'm curious, and you can put it in the chat, if you think that this is something that you might be able to do, or maybe you've done with kids. And as people are just kind of responding and thinking about how this might apply, I think it's always important to think like, how might this apply to me in either working with a different age group or, oh my gosh, it's so funny. The chat is so big that I think Zoom just doesn't like it. Okay, I'm seeing it now. Love it. Love it. Cool. And I hope that you can kind of read through some of, some of the chat so that you can see how people are, taking this in. Great. And I love that someone said, I can do this with all my grades. This is definitely not an age thing, right? You could do this with the littlest of the little and the eldest of the eldest, right? This is a beautiful way of sharing stories and sharing pieces of ourselves. So I 100% knew that we would not get through everything, but I'm going to try to get us into the space of seeing some work that young people can do, and kind of give you a framework around how to think about and how to manage thinking about diversity and equity in the classroom right now. So the first step really is understanding identity. So, right, creating this container where we can be brave in the space because we know what the guidelines are. We've got some language. We've been working on, naming feelings. And now we've got a container where we can also start looking at our identities, some of which we've been kind of taught as Americans to not look at. So we're going to look at identity and group belonging, and I've made this wheel. There are a bunch of different types of wheels like this, but I kind of merged a few together, and I call it the identity wheel. And I want you to notice that on the outside of the wheel is humanity, and on the inside of the wheel is individuality. And oftentimes when I've worked with kindergarten through 5th grade, and I've done work in middle and high school, but kindergarten through 5th grade those are my babies. And I am really clear that there have been times where there's pushback. Well, why are we talking about those group identities in the center, like gender and sexual orientation and ability and race? Either they're too young or they don't see or notice differences. I beg to differ. Yes, they do notice differences. And actually, the younger they are, the better they are at just naming what they see. But on top of that, there's this argument or this position that somehow thinks that if we name our group identities, we take away our humanity, or we take away our individuality. Whereas I think it's a both and. Right? I identify as human. I can laugh and think and cry and feel and love. And I'm an individual. I'm an only child. My mother says I am the only Monique, even though I know there's others. I'm the only Monique. I'm her Monique, right? There's no other one like me. And as a mother, I know that is true for my Moreau and for my Devon. There is no other individual like either of them. So the individual's identity and then the human identity are both givens to me. They of course are just part of who I am. I am an individual and I'm a human. And then swirling around inside of my humanity and my individuality are my social identities. And these are identities that were created by people. They're in-group and out-group identities. So the ones that you see in the circles, gender, sexual orientation, right? Those. The National Association of Independent Schools wisely names those the 8 pillars. And I love that language because I think of them as pillars to my identity. And I'm not an individual or human without those identities being part of the picture. So, and then around that, you see other identities, right? Like language, appearance, and geographic location, and more. And all of these identities, all these parts of me are like, if you think of it as a math equation, right? These are all the pieces to my puzzle, to what make me me. And the reason I love this model is because it doesn't other anyone. Each of us has a gender identity, a sexual orientation, a socioeconomic status and class, religion or belief systems, age, race, right? Each of us can identify in this way, and all of us are multicultural humans. We are all a mixture of all of these identities. And so this is just a thinking question, just think about it. But which of your identities did you focus on when you told your home hunt object stories? Like, where did your stories fall? Did it fall, in like something that you love to do, an activity or interest? Did it fall, somewhere around your race or your socioeconomic status and class, right? And I love it. Some people are so good with using the chat. They're throwing it in the chat. Do it. I love it. It's so interesting, right? Because as we tell our stories, we can now kind of locate them and think, that's interesting. Which of my own identities am I typically most aware of and connected to? And which of my identities do I typically tell stories around? And then perhaps those that I don't tell stories around, I need to get used to leaning into and telling stories around, like thinking about. All right. So I'm going to introduce you to a brilliant woman. If you don't know her already, her name is Kimberly Crenshaw. Hold on. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I was all set. She talks about intersectionality. This is a very short clip. It's like a minute and a half or so. She's talking at the People of Color Conference, which is sponsored by the National Association of Independent Schools. And she's kind of breaking down not only intersectionality, but what a school's responsibility is, how our schools need to be thinking about all of the children and all of their pieces, right? And how we can really attend to especially folks that are typically underrepresented, and how this shows up in our schools. I knew that would happen for some reason. There we go.
Intersectionality is just a metaphor for understanding the ways that multiple forms of inequality or disadvantage sometimes compound themselves, and they create obstacles that often are not understood within conventional ways of thinking about anti-racism or feminism or whatever social justice advocacy structures we have. Intersectionality isn't so much a grand theory, it's a prism for understanding certain kinds of problems. African American girls are 6 times more likely to be suspended than white girls. That's probably a race and a gender problem. It's not just a race problem, it's not just a gender problem. So I encourage people to think about how the convergence of race stereotypes or gender stereotypes might actually play out in the classroom, between teachers and students, between students and other students, between students and administrators, and commit themselves to understanding that as a way of intervening and providing equal educational opportunity for all students, regardless of their identities. Identity isn't simply a self-contained unit. It is a relationship between people in history, people in communities, people in institutions. So schools do a good job when they understand that, and when they commit themselves to curricular development, to opportunities in the school for all students to understand the histories that have brought us to this particular moment. You can't change outcomes without understanding how they've come about. So independent schools can take the lead on that, to be responsive to their student populations and to the communities out of which the students come.
So though she was talking specifically to independent schools, I believe it's our duty and, should really be a joy in all of our schools to think about the intersectionality of the identities of all of our children and how they're playing out in our school communities. And this is, I'm like flashing this at you again, I will be sending it to you, but just to name that, no, they're not too young to talk about race. I like this graphic just because it lays out some of the research. You know that children as young as 2 years use race to reason about other people's behaviors. By 5, Black and Hispanic children in research settings show preference toward their own groups compared to whites. White children at this age remain strongly biased in favor of whiteness. And by kindergarten, children show many of the same racial attitudes that adults in our culture hold. So again, they're looking at us, or they're listening to us. And then this is the big deal, right? Silence about race, about any of these topics around identity that we're kind of afraid to touch because maybe we didn't talk about them. Silence about race reinforces racism. So again, making sure that we're creating spaces where we can lean in, where we can invite our children to lean into complicated conversations. And so there's that wheel that I showed you, and understanding that my identities, are tied to history, right? I think Dr. Crenshaw named that, that they don't stand alone. And so I am recognizing that oppression and empowerment, right, historically impacts all of my identities. And this could be its own workshop, but I'm basically flashing it at you just to remember that those parts of who I am, who can identify as historically empowered, and those parts of who I am that can identify as historically oppressed, make me, I move differently in the world based on those identities and my connections to history. And as our young people get older and they can begin to really explore and think about long ago and far away and systems that were created before they were born, before their parents were born, right? They can think about how those systems impact who they are and the way that they're moving through the world. So here are two children who identify as white, who I thought this particular part of the clip was important because they're talking about, Jasper on the left is talking about feelings that came up for him as he was thinking about his whiteness, about his own whiteness. And the reason I think this is really crucial to think about is our work that we do in the classroom. It can be complicated and it can be a little scary. And when Jasper started to cry in the lesson that he's just going to describe, every single part of me wanted to just rush over and like hug him and stop him from feeling sad. But because we had done so much work, feelings-based work, it was easy, not easy, it was easier for me to just move a little bit closer to him and just put my hand on his back and ask him what he needed. And he said he needed a drink of water. And then he ended up leaving the classroom and coming back. And it's too long a story to tell in the short amount of time we have. But I've watched this little guy grow from 5th grade to now almost 8th grade. Wow. And he is digging deep into understanding his own identity and his whiteness. And he's the first one to share like his feelings around it. So just a little clip from these two.
For someone who identifies as white, how can you move from feeling bad? Because I know that's, and maybe you can talk about your feelings, about how you felt.
Yeah, I have a story. Jason, he's a guy.
What does he do?
A white anti-racist. He came over, and then he wanted for us to write down our feelings about our skin color. And then I was like, oh. So I wrote it down, and I was so angry, because I just hated being white, because, I mean, all these mean white people did all these mean things and were racist, and then there's like no fun to being white, because you always get privileges, there's no struggle. And then I started crying because I was just so angry, because it's like so mean.
Yeah, those are really normal feelings.
And so this is, again, not the beginning of the story, right? But it's important to recognize that in order for Jasper to do his growing, he needed to allow himself, and his teachers needed to allow him to feel all his feelings. And the framework that I was talking about really comes out of Louise German Sparks' work around her anti-bias education goals. So the first piece is affirming identity. And with art, there are so many ways to affirm identity to make sure that young children are feeling good and confident and secure in themselves. The next part is to then engage across difference, to teach engagement and connection. And how do I learn about people who are different than me, who look different than me, who act different than me, who eat differently than me, right? And then the next piece is, the next goal is around developing awareness of injustice and then challenging stereotypes. So recognizing that, yeah, there are injustices in the world and I want to stand up and challenge those. And lastly, and again, this is not linear, right? Because we kind of move between them and go back and forth, but inspiring action for systems change. So in my earlier teaching practice, I missed the last step. Often I missed it. And I would get to this point of like the kids really understood injustices, but they felt like they couldn't do anything about them. And the art really comes in here. You can see on the bottom, there's a collection of cards that were made with an artist. I have a set of them right here. And they were made in response to understanding food insecurity by second graders. And so we can take an understanding of an unfair system, and then we can actually take action against that system. And we can make sure that as we do that, young people are still tapping into like all the feelings that they're having about it, because they're going to have feelings about it. So again, I'm gonna kind of touch on a few things, I think, for about 5 minutes, and then we'll maybe, I don't know, I was gonna say we'll open up for Q&A, but that'd be interesting with 300 and some odd people. So I'm gonna just share a few of these, a few of the things that have gone on in my classroom. So social emotional identity meets identity development, right? How we're gonna use art as a tool for identity exploration. Here you see, these are actually not from my classroom, but from colleagues. You see a web, an identity web that is made by Cleo, who is age 6. And you see some K1 portraits, right? Some self-portraits. So here we're affirming identity, and we're recognizing diversity, because as the children were creating their webs, they were thinking about all the pieces of the puzzle that make them who they are. And you can see in a really visual way how Cleo started thinking about themselves as race. You can see race in the bubble, and it says white. This is pretty unusual for a 6-year-old in the USA to be able to identify themselves racially. And this is about language and about conversations in the classroom and at home that are kind of, working together. You can see that Cleo also understands that their identity is connected to their home, connected to their gender identity, connected to their family. And then you can see in the portraits that the teacher has done something really smart. That the children made portraits. They, first did skin color painting, and they looked at skin, and they talked about skin, and they talked about melanin in their skin. And then, when they created those portraits, the teacher linked them up. And I could imagine, doing this on Zoom too. The teacher linked them up and then had them snack chat, like had them put them together and had them talk about similarities and differences. I love it. I just happened to be looking at the Zoom chat and I see artist Kim Avely's. Yes. So this is part of what I want to talk about, is just connecting with other people. The artist who helped with this project is Kim Avely's. This was her original beautiful, she called these cards, these were health cards. They were around, she called them HIV/AIDS tarot cards. And Kim and I met actually through a parent, I think at school ages ago. And we started working together on different projects. So yes, this was one of the projects that she spearheaded with the kids in collaboration with what they were doing with their, with some buddies around food and food justice. So I bring in books always just to remind us that books are key, right? Books are beautiful visual reminders of who we are, especially when we're affirming identity and affirming racial identity and normalizing the noticing of difference. And, this is, I'm not going to play it right now, but this is a little boy right here who's in the process of a skin color painting. And you can see him mixing and matching and trying to find his just right skin tone. And here you must listen to Apollo, who's 6. He may be our last, well, I don't know, he might be our last video, but here's Apollo, who knows himself very well, both in school, in the conversations he's having in his classroom, and at home.
Multicultural identity is stuff that make you you, like my skin color. That's one of my outside identities, and my inside identity is my feelings.
Can you tell me something else about your family identity?
My family identity is that there are lots of things like the Indonesian, Ecuadorian, Filipino, and also American, and also Chinese.
And so hopefully you could see that, his teacher was inviting him into a conversation and obviously there was a partnership because his teacher wouldn't have been able to tell him all of those things about his identity. So Apollo's home, connection and school connection to understanding how important it is to love yourself is strong. I was so excited about the fact that LACMA was using art to explore feelings that I just pulled from a couple of the folks who are going to be presenting workshops. I'm not deeply connected to the content of what they're going to be doing, but I'm really excited about it. So I hope that you all get to attend. But just in this, feelings realm, it really is important also to think about, right, like, it's the inside and the outside. Like, we're the whole package, right? As people, we're a whole package. And so I love how Apollo talked about, his inside and his outside, like his skin color, right? So, in morning meeting, I might, and I've done quite a few of these and the kids love it, like a feelings draw. So just on Zoom, having them draw their feeling. And then my favorite thing is just like we did with the activity, the home hunt, just holding it up to the Zoom screen and then using their feelings draw to try to name a feeling. Feelings body sculptures, if we had enough time, I'd make you do them. It's too fun. We've been like, I've been getting everybody up and putting our feelings in our bodies and thinking about the Zoom screen as like our stage. And so creating our feelings and then talking about them and talking about what they look like. And just, again, the continued affirmation that all of our feelings are okay, especially in these stressful times, that feeling stressed and feeling anxious and feeling worried and feeling scared, those are all okay to feel. And it's important to share them. We have like a sleepover planned, right? We've got like another 5-6 hours. I'm gonna actually, I'm going to share this one project. Let's see if I have time. I think I'm going to actually share this project with you just to close, because I think it ties really nicely into what we're talking about. As you can see, the students here, they were learning the grid drawing technique, where you can create an image based on looking at the smaller pieces of that image. And so they were learning that in art. And again, we're lucky enough to have an art class to learn that in. And as they were learning that technique, we began to think about in social studies, whose stories are being told, right? And whose stories are not as often told. And so the fifth graders, these are fifth graders, listened to Chimamanda Adichie's The Danger of a Single Story. So if you don't know it, and again, I'll make sure I put it in what I send to you, but check out that TED Talk, play it for your students. Chimamanda Adichie's Danger of a Single Story. Really powerful, a really powerful tool to invite kids into thinking about, why is it that some people's stories are not told? And so our students were pretty moved by that work. And we decided to create a project that was interdisciplinary where they, in art, before that, they chose an artist, a scientist. Actually, I think you'll be able to see if it behaves. Oh, actually, this one's already loaded. I'll go right here. Can everybody see that website? I'll make sure to share the website with you as well. Everybody sees it, yeah? And so they ended up creating a website to push the stories of, there were about 30, visual artists, engineers and inventors, mathematicians and scientists that the children studied. And this was a big project. This was like a all year project that we ended up really completing as the school year completed on Zoom. So we ended up actually finishing this project on Zoom. And I'm just going to give you a little glimpse at some of the artists and how, again, the students took their understanding of, you know, historic oppression. Here's Alma Woodsey, here's Augusta Savage, Dorothea Tanning. Here we will check out Aiko. And they used both art and they used, you know, the art of writing. They thought about, you know, it was interdisciplinary, so they asked some questions mathematically, like how many people have heard of this artist? How many people, you know, have heard of other artists? They ended up drawing their portrait. And so each student really kind of dug deeply into understanding not only, you know, their particular person's story, but they spent time really thinking about how they could use art to shine the light, how to illuminate someone whose story had not been told. And again, I feel like I have so many examples that I could share with you. Just the last thing that I want to name, even though it's 5:31, is that over my right shoulder, that perhaps you've noticed this beautiful vote poster with Breonna Taylor on it. This is my daughter Moreau, who did the other poster. This was, again, another way that she processed through some really hard feelings that she was having about being a Black woman in America. And she told me at the end, she said, you know, the product really speaks for itself, but the process healed her. And so I'm, you know, hoping that in our classrooms, we can invite young people into processes with art and like attending to their emotions and thinking with a lens that is a multicultural lens around identity and diversity, and then taking action. And I'm hoping that, you know, for the future of the planet, that that we can heal ourselves and invite the young people that are in our care every day to learn how to heal themselves. So with that, I'm gonna close. I know I'm 2 minutes over time. I promise you, I will be sending you resources and, you know, things and links and all kinds of things. I'll send them to Lara, and Lara will send them on to you. But I really, really appreciate all of your attention and all of your thoughtful responses in the chat. And LACMA, I appreciate you too for having me. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Monique. I'm crying a little bit right now, so this is hard. But thank you so much for that wonderful and necessary presentation. It was just amazing to hear you talk about the intersections of SEL and equity-centered teaching and connecting them with art in that process. It's really, really powerful stuff. I also just want to say a huge thank you to all the educators who joined us. I know that you had a long day of work. I know you are doing so much work to support your students right now, and we see you and we appreciate you so much. I'd love for everybody to maybe come off mute for a moment and just give a round of applause for Monique and for yourselves for pushing through and doing this today. So on a count of 3, 1, 2, 3.
Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful. Fantastic.
Thank
you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. I hope I can see you again.
Wonderful. Wonderful. That was powerful.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
And then
Monique.
I have just a few more details to share with you. There were some questions that came up in the chat that I want to address. For those of you who are looking for professional development hours credit, you can also fill out the salary point portion of the survey. We'll keep track of your hours that way for you. As far as the recording of the program goes, we will be uploading that to our YouTube channel. So look out for that on LACMA's YouTube. And we also have a lot of new virtual resources to share with you. And my colleague Anna is going to put them in the chat now. We have resources created specifically for this Evenings for Educators program. We also have a link for online courses that includes art making video lessons for K to 5 and history resources for grades 6 and 7. And then we also have a link for virtual field trips for grades 6 to 7 for Title I schools. And if you want to stay connected to more professional development opportunities for educators, please sign up for the LACMA mailing list. Just make sure you check the educators box. Anna's going to share that link in the chat as well. And finally, Anna will share the registration links for the 3 other events taking place as part of this program this week and next week. So that was a lot, I know, but just check the links in the chat box, open them up in new browser tabs and look at them later. Thanks again, everybody. This was wonderful. We look forward to seeing you later this week.